Welcome to Changed for Good, Life Elevated Through Christ with LSI Studios. In this podcast, we explore the ways in which Jesus Christ can make a lasting and elevated change in our lives. Because of Him, we can become more than we were and also receive grace for where we are on our journey. I'm your host, Britta Benyon. Okay, today I have Sister Ramirez, Lena Ramirez, with me, and thank you for being here. Thanks for being willing to come on.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we have so many wonderful people to chat with, and I am thrilled every time I get to talk to somebody and learn more about them and hear your testimony. So why don't you first off tell us a little bit about yourself in this phase of life, I guess?
Yeah, so my name's Sister Lena Ramirez, and I work as a naturopathic physician here in town. I'm about to be 50 years old. I'm married to my husband, Juan Gabriel Ramirez, and we have a little entourage of little animals here that we live with, that we currently share our lives with. And then we also have two daughters. So I have a daughter that is about to turn 30, and then he also has a daughter who she's 20 and she's going to ASU currently. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And your entourage of animals, do they all live in the house with you?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I used to have a lot more when I lived in Colorado and I had a farm, but now I've kind of pared down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, those animals can be fun. They can be a lot of fun in the household. So that's awesome. We're just gonna jump into, first of all, having you share just a story about how the gospel of Jesus Christ has changed you individually, and then I think we'll go into a little bit more about your story. But why don't you share with us one or two stories there?
Yeah. So it was maybe about 2 months ago, and I was sitting in class. I am in the Monte Vista branch, and it's Spanish speaking. And while I am valiantly trying to increase my vocabulary and be able to speak more Spanish, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, right on the border. So I think I just naturally have a big vocabulary, but it's been challenging. So normally what I'll do is I'll go to the Viewpoint Wards meetings, and then I'll go to Sacrament with my branch. And I was sitting in there, and Brother Don Davidson, he shared a story about just sort of being estranged from his son and not having much contact with him, and finally getting like the opportunity to speak to him after a long time. And after he shared his story and after the meeting, I thanked him for sharing that, because also I'm estranged from my daughter as well. And when I shared that with them, he said, you could put her name in the temple. And I don't know why that thought had never crossed my mind to do. And so the very next weekend, or that week, I literally called, of course, like Sunday, Monday, they're closed. And then I called and I put her name in the temple. And I had already had planned my nephew's graduation, and I knew that I was, had that planned out for a while, and that I was going to be there, and that my sister and brother and my, were also going to be in attendance for that event. But I got a call from my brother that week, and he had told me that my daughter was going to be there, and I hadn't seen her in 10 years. It's just a very clear example of how he shows up for us and how the gospel sort of plays out in my life. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's
it had been
wonderful.
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years, so.
Yeah.
No contact. I had zero contact with her. I was just hearing about her, and I'm sure she was also from my family members who all just sort of knew of the situation. She's a beautiful human being, and she's very free-spirited, and she's very strong-willed, just like I am. And, she kind of had made up her mind a long time ago about our relationship. And I always pray that we can reconnect as if no time has passed, and that, our relationship will come together again. Yeah. Whether or not that actually happens is another thing. It's, it was just a completely different way of thinking about how to connect with her. So, yeah.
Oh, that is so neat. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so did you get to see her then at this gathering?
Yes, I did get to see her at the
Okay,
gathering,
that's neat.
and I got to be in her presence the
Mm.
entire time. And she made no effort to sort of connect with me, and I could tell that I really felt like it wasn't kind of the time or place to really kind of. So I just respected her space. She also did mine, but
Mm-hmm.
I was literally, with her for the entire weekend, and it was just such a
Oh,
beautiful thing. So
that is so neat.
yeah,
Oh, and I think it's interesting because I know part of your story speaks to the power of prayer. And essentially, when you put someone's name in the temple, people are praying for that person, and it is powerful. Like, it's amazing to know and to see what can come about because of that. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that story. And tell us a little bit about. I mean, the gospel obviously is impactful in your life now, and I loved some of the things you wrote about how you feel it's different now than it was before. Do you want to speak to that?
yeah. I think before my life felt very tumultuous. Like I felt like I had a lot more ups and downs, and I felt like I was also like I feel like I've always been very intuitive since like or just very aware and sensitive to different feelings that were around me. But I also feel like I was just throughout my life I've had some really sort of events and dangerous situations that I found myself in where I was I felt strongly like a prompting inside to get out or go this direction or whatnot. And I feel like now since I've been baptized, I feel like that has ticked way down. I feel like I have this layer of protection around me now, and I feel like I'm just not put into those sort of situations anymore that were potentially life threatening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the way you describe it, I guess, I mean, that was the Spirit, even though maybe you didn't recognize it at the time, warning you, right? Like everybody has the light of Christ within them, right? Everybody can have experiences with the Spirit. And I think it's interesting the way you say that now the ups and downs aren't as intense, or they're not like we have them, right? I think we all
Yeah.
still have ups and downs, but they're not at the same level. And you just have this layer of protection, which is a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, I mean the intensity. I didn't have words for spiritual warfare, but for me the spiritual warfare was very real in my life. And yeah, there was so many displays of it now that I look back on it. And now I feel like just a sense of peace and a sense of comfort and also that protection. So now when I'm out navigating the world, just knowing that he's there protecting me, it just sort of like, and it's a layer of protection that like even the most highly trained bodyguards can't provide. And just knowing that, just we're always sort of walking around with that. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think that comes from that a covenant relationship that you have with your Heavenly Father, right? Like something
100%.
something that you're investing in. You've made covenants, and He's investing in. He's made covenants with you, and you are walking together, essentially, right? Like you're walking in Him, and Him in you. Which is so awesome.
Yeah, and just recently at the state conference with Elder Christopherson that just recently spoke, it really spoke out to me, like, what are we doing to sort of nourish that spiritual part? And making sure that we are, like, keeping the covenants and doing our part and also, building that relationship. And it really stood out to me when he said, like, making our prayers not like shopping list, and instead, sitting there and maybe not asking for anything, or and waiting to see and being contemplating and reflecting and allowing for God to sort of speak to us as far as like what He would like us to do, rather than always coming to Him with this big old list. And that really kind of resonated with me too.
Yeah, and I want to say that you've experienced that like often in your life, it seems like to me, from what you've shared with me already. So why don't we go into that and have you tell me more about, I guess, just your religious background growing up, and kind of what happened when you were able to encounter the church in your life.
Yeah. So I grew up Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother both my grandfathers were in the military, and they both got, during World War II, were sent across the world. One landed the second day after Normandy and met my grandmother there in Austria.
Mm.
And so my other grandmother was Austrian. And then my other grandfather was in the war tribunals in Pearl Harbor and guarding some of the criminals, the war criminals over there in Japan, where he met my grandmother. And so, that's my mother's mom, and so my dad, I call him a closet Catholic because he never really practiced anything. Although he grew up Catholic, he was not practicing at the time. And so my mother was very, however, active, and so was my grandmother in their sort of organized form of Buddhism. And so growing up, we kind of got, taken to those sort of meetings and kind of got raised with that, mainly like the Buddhist philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was just mostly, I felt very like, self, like, you have like all the worlds inside of you and everything is about karma and like, you do good because, you don't want to have bad karma, that kind of thing. So it was an okay bearing to grow up with, but I can see now, like I see it so differently now. But then I joined the Navy when I was 18. I became a hospital corpsman or a medic for 5 years. So it really got me to like grow up pretty quickly. But at that time, I just sort of let go of all things and wasn't really believing in anything. I really felt like, there's really nothing out there, to be honest. When people would ask me, like, what do you believe in? I would always say myself. And now I feel like how selfish of an answer that is. But, and then I thought just like when you died, that was it. It just, everything went black. And I know so differently now, though. But so from the age of 20 to about 40, I wasn't really like seeking anything out, although I did, attend some talks on spirituality. I felt like with Eckhart Tolle and some of those other things, but I wasn't really, there was no, for me, I felt like no need to seek anything out. And then in 2013 on June 11th, I was living in Colorado at the time. I had a small little cabin. I had a small sustainable organic farm that I ran. I worked at the farmer's market. I was finishing my master's degree in nutrition at the University of Colorado. And by all accounts, I had everything I'd ever wanted. And I was doing exactly what I was most passionate about, at least I felt at the time. But we had a fire that came through. The fire advanced 19 miles on the first day. We literally had 20 minutes to evacuate. And my husband at the time, we had been married 14 years, but at that point, the marriage was kind of already not serving either one of us. And I only had time to evacuate my animals. I basically just freed everybody. I had 250 chickens. I had rare heritage breed hogs that I was raising. They were on the endangered livestock list. I had goats, and I had 3 dogs. And anyways, at this time, my daughter's in college at this time, and so she wasn't around there. But she was kind of living already with her now husband, her high school sweetheart. And so anyways, but I just had 20 minutes to free everybody. I remember opening my door to my cabin after I had let everybody out and just having this conscious thought that like, even if I lost everything, what have I actually lost? Nothing. And I just shut my door. I didn't even take my clothes. So we ended up being evacuated for 6 days. I was staying at the Marriott with some of my neighbors who had already knew that they had lost their home because at the time, it was the largest home loss in the state of Colorado's history, although that unfortunately has since been far surpassed.
Oh, wow.
But I was on the first day, I think over 500 homes were taken on that first day. And so some of my neighbors had like everything they owned was on the roof rack, and it was just incredibly stressful. My hair was falling out in clumps from the stress response, just from 6 days of kind of not eating and not sleeping. We were listening to like the police scanners, and that was like probably now hindsight, like the worst thing I could have done, because we could hear them moving from address to address and house to house. And so on that 6th day, we were listening to the broadcast about whether or not we were going to be able to go back. And the sheriff said, we just have no idea at this point. And I just sort of broke down. And my husband at the time just looked at me and said, I'm done. I can't. I'm done. I'm literally done with everything. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And then he just left me, and he went about 4 hours away to his cousin's house. And I now know, some people just check out in times of extreme stress, and I realize that that's a large part of what he did. He just couldn't handle it and checked out, but then left me there trying to figure out what I was going to do. My neighbors, at this time, there was no rain in the forecast whatsoever, and there was no real news going on, I guess, in the world. I'm not sure, but we got broadcast, and it got picked up by the Associated Press, and like it actually made world news. Wow. And there were several images of homes that were burning, and people started praying for us, from all over the world, and literally like within a day, rain all of a sudden came into the forecast, and it literally poured rain. It was June 11th that the fire started, and it got so cold, and we got like pouring down torrential rain that I thought it might even snow at that point, which is incredible. It's the middle of summer. But and so for me, I realized like the power of prayers, because it was palpable. Like there were so many people around the world that was praying for our area that you could feel that. The intensity, and it was this incredible sense of peace, and that sort of just washes over you, and like love, and knowing that everything was going to be okay. Wow. That came from everyone. And there were so many weird signs that I saw of like light coming from nowhere. And so anyways, I finally, we got to go back into our place, and my neighbors knew that I was going back alone, even though they had lost their home. And they said, we don't want you to go back to your house alone, so we're going to go with you so you don't have to go back alone. And they met me at my gate, and I went into so I just kind of picked up the pieces, and but it really got me at that point, like, why am I here? Like, what is its purpose? Like, what, like, does all this mean? And so I really had kind of like a breakdown, and just really asked those questions, because I was very conflicted about what everything meant at that point. And the other remarkable or miracle thing was that it was like as if the fire had never happened at my place. There was not even ash, even though we had video cameras showing that it looked like it was snowing. There was so much ash that was falling. But the rain had literally came and wiped everything away. And there wasn't even a smell of smoke. And it was just in the cabin or anything. It was just incredible. It was like, it was just amazing. And so anyways, I asked all those questions, and literally I want to say, and I can't remember exactly, but it was either that the following night or within a couple nights, the moonlight, I had a loft in my cabin where I slept, and it was coming through my sunlight that I had. It was just literally beaming on my bed. It was lighting my entire bed up. And I heard the words "right" in the middle of the night. And it was cold, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want to go. I'd have to go downstairs to get something to write with, and I don't have anything. And the next thing I heard was that I had to have discipline. Like, I heard the word discipline, and then I heard, you have to have discipline. And again, these things I wouldn't say that to myself. So I figured, okay, like I went downstairs, I got something to write with, and I could hardly see what I was writing with. 2013, we still weren't using cell phones as much as we are now.
Yeah.
But I could barely see, and only by the moonlight. But the first words I wrote down were, "You're being called upon to practice medicine. You're a lighted being, my child." And these were all words, especially my child. It's not like I grew up with that in my vernacular to say, or to even have that sort of concept.
Yeah.
So for me, like, there's no denying like where this voice was coming from. And I literally got this personal revelation handed to me with like laid out everything. Like even like you're going to Arizona, you're going to go to school there, medical school there, and just I literally in a page he laid everything out for me in that one single revelation. And so then I went to work the following day, and I said, I got this incredible thing last night, and I think I'm leaving. And everybody was just like, what are you doing? Like, are you crazy? Like, you have everything. Like, we all want to be like you. Like, what are you doing? I said, I have a calling. Like, I don't know who uses that word anymore, calling,
Yes.
Like, what is that about? And then, so basically everybody thought had lost it, that I was just like, okay, she just went through a really traumatic event. She's probably just having a hard time dealing. But I knew for me, there was no denying that this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I just sort of had faith to sort of step off that cliff and know that everything was going to be fine and that I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I just started putting one foot in front of the other and started working toward that. In the meantime, I was sort of like looking forward to these middle of the night, sort of writings. I kept a book by my bedside and made sure I had everything I needed. And I kept getting these sort of like guided conversations, I would say, because I was definitely asking questions, and I asked, who is this that is talking to me?
Yeah.
And I got, that it's your Heavenly Father, and that immediately when I heard that, I felt just like this warm embrace around me of comfort, and it was the most beautiful feeling. So fast forward, I interviewed at my medical school, and they said, are you interviewing at any other schools? And I said, no, this is the only one. And they're like, well, that's kind of brazen, of you to not really like. And I said, no, I know exactly this is the school that I'm supposed to go to. And so I started there, and I moved from my log cabin on 5 acres to renting a room in a condo in Tempe, Arizona. It was just an incredible leap of faith for me that everything was going to be just fine. And I started school with about 150 other colleagues, and we were maybe about a month into it, and I had one of those nights I had gotten, or those evenings, I had gotten that I needed to sort of get more education about the Bible. And if you didn't grow up with it, it's pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
But I thought like, oh, it's going to be pretty easy because I'll just open a page and magically it'll be the exact thing I need to hear, and it'll all make sense, and I'll be guided just like I've been guided this entire time. And then I heard the words, don't worry, that I'm guiding someone to you that will help you gain more knowledge in me. And I was like, okay, good, because I don't know what I'm doing here. And then, so again, like literally the next day I went to school, and we were just in the first part of our school, so it was tough. I mean, literally you do sciences for the entire day, 8-9 hours, and then you have to go home and study because a lot of times we had exams the following day. Wow. And this colleague of mine came up to me and he said, I have something for you, but I have it in my car and I'll have to give it to you at lunch. And I thought, oh, great. Like, I hardly knew this person because the class was so big. Um, and at lunchtime, he went to his car and he came back and he brought the Book of Mormon to me and he handed it to me and he said, I hardly know you, like, but I felt strongly prompted to give this to you today. So I hope you don't think I'm strange or anything, you know, because we hardly knew each other. And he handed it to me and he said, do you know what this is? And I said, I know exactly what this is. And even though at that point in my life, which was 40, I had never seen the Book of Mormon. I didn't know anybody that was a Latter-day Saint. It just was not on my radar. Yeah. I thought I was going to get a study guide, which technically I did. But anyways, so it was kind of this really amazing moment of realization for me that this is exactly what I was supposed to get. And so, yeah, I started taking the lessons with the missionaries and had some amazingly like spiritual gems with the sort of like shared experiences with these missionaries. And then made the decision to get baptized. And for me, there was no denying, like there was no second guessing or hesitation, because this was completely stuff that I was getting. It wasn't like anybody was, trying to persuade me or do anything like that. This is all just out of, like the only thing I can explain now is that I was gathered, because that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And so the spiritual warfare was real, though. And the night before my baptism, with the return missionary, his name is Jake Chattel, by the way, we had to send somebody to jail that was a very violent criminal that stole my car. And it was just really like, oh no. The spiritual warfare was just full on intense. The
adversary was working hard.
Yeah, I couldn't get more intense than that. In fact, the Tempe Police Department said, do you know how rare it is that we taser somebody? And then they said also, do you know how rare it is that we draw our weapons on somebody? And so I didn't realize like how intense that was, that situation, or how dangerous it was. So the next day I got baptized, and we happened to be going on to our break from school for 2 weeks, and Jake had mentioned like, hey, do you want to just come hang out with me and my family in Utah? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't have any plans at that time. So with his family, we went up. And they were like, well, you could go, see General Conference. We don't have tickets, but you can see it next door and watch it that way, or you can just come with us to watch it if you'd like. Mm-hmm. And then on a whim, we decided, hey, let's just go down to the Temple Square and see if we can't get in. And sure enough, I got tickets. And so a week after my baptism, I was in the April conference on a Sunday session, listening to everyone. And just it was just incredibly surreal how that all happened. But yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. And this gentleman, I guess we'll call him, who introduced you to the gospel, who brought you the Book of Mormon, you said he was a return missionary, right? From
Poland.
From Poland, right? Okay. That is so neat. And he was still serving the Lord, right? Like he was still sensitive to those promptings, still going out and finding, people and gathering, the way you put it, which is a beautiful way to say it, that you were being gathered.
Yeah, you could tell with Jake that he was very hesitant. Like, you could tell that he was also struggling with the prompting he got to hand me the Book of Mormon, because he didn't want to think like, oh, you're strange or whatever. And so we both kind of had that moment. But yeah, it's incredible.
That is so cool. And then you got to go to conference like right after that, which is just a worldwide gathering of the church, but it's held in Salt Lake City, Utah, and so you can go live. Sometimes people are able to go live and watch it in the conference center, which is like what they call it, and which is a really neat experience to be there in person. And then alternatively, you can watch it broadcast throughout the world. But yeah, what a neat opportunity to be able to go there right after your baptism.
Yeah.
How cool.
I had this state of euphoria and this, ever since my baptism, and it lasted for so long. So, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so neat. And I think it's important that you brought up the fact that there's, the way you say it, spiritual warfare, or, or there's, I don't know,
the adversary.
Push from the adversary, yeah, from the other side. Like he's trying to prevent us from progressing spiritually, right? As he wants to do that. But
he wants nothing more, especially if you're, a lighted being and you're going to help a lot of people and you're going to bring a lot of light. I do help a lot of my patients with healing. And I felt like I had a target on my back in some sense. And he wants nothing more than to knock you off your path. And I really feel like our relationships are sort of ground zero for that. Because if he can target us with our relationships, then you cannot go out in this world and do what you're meant to do. Like if you get in a fight with your significant other or your kids or that sort of thing, you are not the same person that's out there navigating the world. You're in your head. There's a lot of turmoil, and then then he just slowly starts to try to pull you in the direction. And I really feel like my whole story, I really feel like the most important thing that the reason why I was brought to Arizona was so that I could meet my husband. Yeah. So, and he's also a convert, but he had already been in the church, and so that I could be sealed to him, and that I could navigate this world with somebody that was, strong and by my side in that capacity. But so
I think that you're right. I think that this that he does work hard at our relationships. I think a big piece of that is because he understands to some extent how important families are.
Exactly.
And so, because they are in the God's plan, families are extremely important, and so he does try to tear them apart. And so the way you describe that with relationships and how they can have an impact on the way that you're able to go out into the world, it makes a lot of sense, and it resonates with me for sure. Like, I can see that.
Yeah, because sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
I mean, just a little story, like about the one time I was standing in line at the checkout stand at Sprouts, and I was tired because I was just getting off work, and I just heard real strongly that I needed to compliment that lady, or it was a younger girl in front of me, about her purse, her bag that she was carrying. And I could care less about purses and bags. And I'm just thinking, oh, I'm tired. I don't really want to, engage in with somebody, a stranger, in small talk. And I really don't like purses. I'm just thinking all this stuff in my head. Yeah. And then it just kept, the prompting just kept getting louder and louder. And so I finally worked up the courage to say, like, hey, I really like your purse, your bag. And this younger woman, she just started crying. And I just thought to myself, oh no, like, what did I just do? Yeah. But she said, this is my mom's favorite purse. And she passed away like 3 months prior. And she said, I've kind of carried it with me all the time, And so, and it just makes me realize sometimes, like, how selfish, or how, how easy was that for me to just, do that. And also to the way that he kind of is able to work through me to also to help her, and maybe provide some comfort in knowing that, maybe somebody was looking out for her. And it was just a really incredible, what I call spiritual gems. And that happens so much. And it's like we miss those on our day-to-day basis. And like I said, like if you're in turmoil with your relationship or anything like that, you're not going to be able to be open, or you won't be able to hear those as much. And I think as Latter-day Saints, like it's super important, because what I've come to realize now, that our purpose in life is really to be of service, and how much he blesses us when we are in that role of service to others.
Definitely. Yeah, and I love hearing you talk about it. Makes me think of this quote that I was reading before we got together, and it's talking about the Savior and how he was on the sea, and he calmed the sea, right? He had calmed the sea.
The tempest, yeah.
And Elder Holland says about this, he says, always remember in that biblical story that he was out there on the water also, that he faced the worst of it right along with the newest and youngest and most fearful. Only one who has fought against those ominous waves is justified in telling us, as well as the sea, to be still. Only one who has taken the final brunt of such adversity could ever be justified in telling us in such times to be of good cheer. And I love that, because it's true. He's the one who can say, first of all, who can relate. He's experienced all of the things that we will ever experience, as well as the rest of the human race, which is unfathomable to us. We can't even quite understand how that works, but he has done it, and so he can understand more than anybody else can. And then he's also, so he's been there, right? Like he's fought against those waves. He's been in that sea. He's been, he's felt the brunt of all of it, right? But he's telling us to be still. He's telling us to be of good cheer. Like he knows the outcome. He knows what's coming. He knows that it's all going to work out and be okay. And so our trust in him is so important, in our faith in him, and knowing that, yeah, we're navigating a hard world, and Satan wants to pull us all down, but he's the one who has peace. He's the one who has the calm. Kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, that's what you feel now in your life, almost as like a base layer instead of turmoil.
It's definitely the current, the undercurrent now.
Yeah.
Right? And Jesus in that story, he was asleep.
Yeah.
During that, they had to wake him up. That's one of my favorite videos I love to watch. They had to wake him up, and they're just like all in a panic, like, help us, like, what, we're all gonna die, like, we're all gonna perish if you don't.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I think it was like, oh ye of little faith, and I really feel like that's just it's really true. Yeah. So
yeah. And I like your I don't know how you've almost summed up what your life has become, is service, and trying to bring your light to others. And really all the light within each one of us is the light of Christ. And when we're sharing our light, we're sharing his light, and it's perpetuating it out more and more into the world. So I think that's so wonderful. And I know that I love that your testimony is powerful in that way too, of who was speaking to you and during all those times, and who was guiding you, and how you were led to the gospel, because this gave you more, right? Like it was giving you more than just some personal awakenings, right, at night, or some revelation, which was super important and powerful. But I love that the Lord was like, hey, but I have more to give and to offer. And I think he really is trying to reach each one of us in that way, member of the church or not, right? Like, I think like the gospel provides so much more knowledge, and then as we continue to keep seeking, we can gain more and more, which is powerful and wonderful. Do you have anything else that you want to add or share as we wrap up?
Yeah, I just, for me, there's no denying that this is the true church. Just because of my personal experience, like my faith and my belief, it will never waver, because I can't undo that story that I just shared. So, I really feel like if I could say, and I don't know, but if anybody is struggling with their faith or whether or not this church is true, because that part for me, I don't know why, but it just sort of breaks my heart when if people are feeling that way, because I feel like I have this deep knowing that sort of like, I think Eckhart has a quote like surpasses all understanding, and it truly does. And I just would pray that they would also be able to feel that same feeling that I can feel.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful testimony, and thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your light.
Thank you. Thank you.
With all of us. It's wonderful.
I want to thank our guest again for being here today. I pray that as you listened, the Spirit whispered to you the specific actions you can take as you move forward in your daily life. I know Christ is there, and that following those promptings will bring you closer to Him and to lasting and elevated change. May God be with you in your journey. To find out more, visit us at lsistudios.com, and to learn more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, visit comeuntochrist.org or reach out to us.